Hey there, Cody from Black Forest Racing. So I'm at the shop today on a Sunday all by myself, other than one of my biggest fans. And I was a bit bored, so I was browsing Reddit. And I came across a thread on Reddit discussing an old myth, something that I've had arguments with a couple of different techs, with other shop owners even. Comes down to torque wrenches and socket extensions. So this myth states that if you use an extension on your torque wrench to get a little bit of that better access or whatever it may be, that the extension itself will end up distorting your torque measurement and causing you to inaccurately tighten the bolt. The people that say this purport that the twisting of the extension itself has an effect on the outputted torque. And of course, physics completely refutes this. Any force that you're putting in is coming out the other end, as long as you're doing it in a constant manner. And also as long as the extension and the ratchet head is staying perpendicular to your fastener. If you're using, for instance, this one I grabbed here for demo is known as a wobbly extension, which it allows you to be off axis a little bit. That, putting the torque wrench off axis, will definitely throw out the torque reading by some amount. But today, I've set up a little experiment to demonstrate this effect and to test it and prove once and for all that if there is any effect whatsoever, it's minimal, negligible, and less than the margin of error in your actual torque wrench. So what I've done here, I have two Snap-on Tech Wrench 2s. These are the digital kind with a nice display, which will make this easier for us to show the actual numbers that we're producing. I have a 3/8 drive with a 14mm Allen socket on it. I have a 1/2-inch drive wrench with a 14mm 6-point socket on it. They go directly together, and we can torque them against each other to provide readings on both wrenches to see what the actual numbers are and see if they agree with each other. Now, this isn't the most scientific and the most accurate test in the world. The torque wrenches themselves are going to have some margin of error, and then between the two margins of error between two torque wrenches, we can be a little bit off. I forget what Snap-on actually rates the margin of error as, with these. I think it's something in the area of 1%, maybe it was 2%. So in theory, if one of them is reading on the low end of that margin, and one of them is reading on the high end of that margin, we could have as much as a 4% spread. But realistically, that's well under any margin of error that's involved in actually tightening a fastener on a car. So the differences will really be negligible. Now, since I am here by myself, I don't have somebody to help me support the torque wrenches, so I'm just going to do this on the ground using the tire of this Boxster to hold the head of the 3/8 wrench still. You can see I'll get these both booted up. We're both zeroed. We're both set to 100 Newton meters. And let's do the first test, no extensions. We're just going to put the two wrenches together and see what kind of numbers we get. We got 108.9 versus 103.8. 102.9, 101.9. 103.3 versus 102.0. 106.7, 102.3. 103.8 versus 106.3. 104.1 versus 107.3. All right, now that we've actually checked the torque wrenches against each other a couple times, we see that there's definitely a difference between them. We've got like a 2 to 4% swing. Sometimes they're dead on, sometimes they're a little bit further apart. But we can see that it's a fairly tight margin of error. Definitely, again, well within the tolerance of what you need when you're actually torquing a bolt on a car. I got every extension out of my toolbox. I've actually measured it's 100 inches worth of extension, which, you know, we're talking a little bit more than 8 feet here. Pretty ridiculous. Something, you know, obviously not something that anybody's ever going to actually use and expect to get an actual torque number out of. Yeah, sometimes I do use quite a long set of extensions if I'm trying to like reach over the top of a transmission to get to a bolt that's on top, something like that. But that's usually for breaking it loose. We're not actually trying to torque those bolts. So again, we've got a completely ridiculous number of extensions piled on top of each other. They all are straight extensions, not wobble extensions, and I am trying to keep them perpendicular as much as possible. Okay, so we've got both of our torque wrenches set up at the end of our 100-inch length of extensions here, including a couple of big 30-inchers, some 14s, 12s, 6s, 10s, 3s. There's even a 1 down at the end. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different joints connected together. So you would think here, if there's going to be a problem, this setup is going to demonstrate the problem. It's going to show us how stupidly inaccurate using an extension is, if there's anything to be shown at all. Okay, so I'm going to do like 3 or 4 torques here just so we can build up a little database of results to show with our insane amount of extension how inaccurate we get. Here's one. I think they beeped at the exact same time because I didn't even hear the first one. 2. 3. And last one. Okay. So there you have it. As you can see, we're still well within our margin of error. This absurd number of extensions hasn't really made any noticeable difference. If anything, a couple of those were more accurate than the readings that we were getting before. Again, when you are using an extension, you do need to try to stay on axis. If you do get off center, then yes, that will throw off your readings. But any experienced technician ought to be able to hold the torque wrench straight, support the head, keep it from getting off axis, and then you won't really have to deal with that problem. And as you can see, there's no reason to fear using a reasonable amount of extension if you need to reach a bolt that's down inside of something, or otherwise keep you away from getting your knuckles busted if the wrench slips or something like that. There's no reason not to use a reasonable amount of extension. So as you can see, I think the point's been proven. The variation between our 2 torque wrenches is basically nil. That really proves the point. Being on axis is much more important to whether you actually have an extension or not. The extensions will twist, and the amount of motion that you have to put in will be more when you're using an extension, and varies based on how much extension you have, obviously. But the actual input number and the output number are going to be the same regardless if you've got no extension, a realistic extension, or an absurd amount of extension. You're just going to get the same amount of torque within margin of error that's tolerable in everyday work. So if you're in the aircraft industry, I could see that potentially the tolerances there are going to be much lower. You're going to be using a way more expensive torque wrench than are just off-the-shelf snap-on units. So your margin of error is probably going to be a lot lower, and then maybe I could see it making a difference. But for everyday automotive use, even for race cars, it really just doesn't seem to make a difference that matters in the real world. But wait, you say, doesn't that make torque sticks useless? Well, in my opinion, yes, torque sticks are useless. I guess I see the use of them in a high-volume oil change type shop for putting on wheels. But generally for any sort of precision torquing, yes, they are useless. They're not terribly accurate. They get the job done. You're probably not going to break something when you use one, but they operate entirely different. A torque stick is used with an impact air wrench, which has momentary impacts, not a steady force from a torque wrench. So the torque stick is basically a torsion bar spring. So when the impact gun hits it, it winds up with a certain amount of spring force, but then the force of that impact goes away and it unwinds again. So the impact gun is going to hit it and wind, and it does that every time you hear your wrench make that classic gadunk noise. it's hitting that torque stick, and the torque stick is going to twist with a certain amount of spring force and then stop. If you were to put a torque stick on a torque wrench, all it's going to be is a long 17 millimeter or whatever size socket. It's going to torque just the same as anything else. If you put more force in your torque wrench, more force is going to come out of the torque stick. They just don't work like a lot of people seem to think they do. And again, they're not very accurate. If you're actually trying to do something important, please don't use them. Use an actual torque wrench. It takes a tiny bit more time. You end up with a way higher quality of work. And hopefully your customer won't end up broken down on the side of the road, unable to get their lug nuts loose because they're torqued to some bajillion foot-pounds. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. I'm probably going to start to do more videos like this. I've also got some other projects that I've already filmed that I'm in editing, so we're going to get a little bit more content on our YouTube page here very shortly. And if you like it, you can subscribe to us here on YouTube. Make sure you thumbs up this video. I'm on Instagram as well, at Black Forest Racing, and you can catch us on Facebook where we do a lot of other little videos and daily pictures too. Thanks. Happy motoring.